The sound of the suitcase zipper stayed with me longer than his words. It scraped slowly, unevenly, as if even the bag hesitated to close. I stood near the bedroom door, barefoot on the cold floor, holding my breath so he wouldn't hear it shake. He didn't look at me when he said it. I can't live like this anymore. In that moment, I didn't think about love or marriage. I thought about where I would sleep. Before everything broke, my life was quiet and ordinary. Not perfect, not rich, but steady. We lived in a small, rented apartment. 2 rooms, a narrow kitchen, and a balcony that caught the evening breeze if you stood in the right corner. Every morning, I woke before him, made tea, and packed his lunch carefully. Rice, simple vegetables, sometimes leftovers from dinner. I believed marriage was built on these small routines. He used to smile when I handed him his lunchbox. Not a big smile, just enough to make me feel useful. Money was always tight, but we managed, or at least I thought we did. Slowly, his tone changed. Not angry, just distant. He started comparing. My friend bought a car. His wife helps in the business. They're moving to a better place. I listened quietly. I nodded. I didn't argue, because deep inside, I believed patience would protect me. I was wrong. When money became the measure. One evening, during dinner, he pushed the plate away. "I'm tired," he said. Not tired of work, not tired of life, tired of me. I could feel it in the silence, in the way he checked his phone more than my face, in the way my presence became invisible. That night, I washed dishes slowly, listening to water hit steel, pretending the sound didn't match my heartbeat. A week later, he brought divorce papers. No shouting, no tears, just paper. "You have nothing anyway," he said quietly. "It will be easier this way." That sentence broke something in me that never fully healed, because it wasn't just the marriage he was ending, it was my worth. The divorce papers stayed on the table for 3 days. He didn't rush me. He didn't need to. Every time I walked past them, they reminded me that my life had been reduced to ink and signatures. I read the first page again and again, even though I already knew what it said. Names, dates, a clean ending to a messy truth. On the 4th morning, he said quietly, "Have you decided?" I looked at his face, searching for the man I married. I couldn't find him anymore. No room for questions. I tried to speak. My voice came out small. "Where will I go?" He exhaled slowly, like I had asked something unreasonable. "You'll manage," he said. "You always do." That was the moment I understood something important. In his story, I had already disappeared, signing away my life. The pen felt heavier than it should have. My hand shook, not because I was weak, but because I was still hoping. Hope is strange. Even when someone has already walked away, it waits. When I signed, he didn't thank me. He didn't apologize. He just folded the papers neatly and placed them in his bag. Marriage ended with the sound of paper sliding against paper. Thrown out without anger. He gave me 1 week, 7 days. "Take what you need," he said, "but don't take anything unnecessary." Unnecessary. I looked around the house. The curtains I washed every month, the plates I chose because they were cheap and strong, the bed where I spent years listening to his breathing. What part of my life was necessary now? Packing in silence. I packed slowly, not because I had much, but because each item carried memory. 2 saris, a sweater with a loose button, some old photographs I hid between clothes. He watched from the doorway, not angry, not sad, just done. The last night. On my last night there, I slept on the floor. The bed felt like a lie. I stared at the ceiling fan turning slowly, counting rotations like they were seconds of my old life leaving. I didn't cry. My tears had learned to wait. In the morning, I made tea out of habit. He didn't drink it. Public humiliation. The landlord was waiting when I left. He didn't know the full story, but he knew enough. "Problem ho gaya?" he asked softly. Before I could answer, my husband said, "She has no income. I can't carry her anymore." The word carry burned. I nodded politely, picked up my bag, and stepped outside. The door closed behind me without ceremony. Walking away with nothing. I stood on the street for a long moment. People passed by. Life continued. I had no home, no husband, no money. But I was still standing. That surprised even me. That day, when he walked back into the house and locked the door behind him, he believed he had ended my story. He had no idea it was only the beginning. The first night after I left, I slept on my sister's floor. She didn't say much. She didn't have to. The room smelled like damp clothes and leftover food. I folded my dupatta carefully and used it as a pillow. The floor was cold, but it wasn't the cold that kept me awake. It was the sound of being unwanted. In the morning, my sister moved around quietly, as if I were fragile glass. She handed me tea without meeting my eyes. "How long will you stay?" she asked, not unkindly. I stirred the sugar until it disappeared. "I don't know," I said. That answer made both of us uncomfortable. By the third day, I noticed small changes. Less food on the table, a shorter temper in the air. I ate less without being asked. I washed dishes quickly. I tried to take up as little space as possible. When a person becomes a burden, they learn invisibility. One afternoon, I heard my sister speaking on the phone. Her voice was low, careful. "She's here. Yes, divorced. No income." Each word landed like a soft slap. She wasn't lying. That didn't make it hurt less. I started waking up early, not because I had somewhere to go, but because lying down felt dangerous. I walked through streets with small shops and notice boards. Helper needed, cleaner required. People looked at my age first, then at my face. Then they shook their heads politely. The little cash I had saved disappeared faster than I expected. Bus fares, a simple meal, soap. I kept receipts folded neatly, like they were proof I still existed. Each coin mattered. Poverty doesn't arrive loudly. It enters quietly and sits beside you. I avoided places where people knew me. I didn't want pity. I didn't want questions. Once, I saw a neighbor from my old street. I crossed the road like a stranger. Shame teaches you strange movements. One evening, my sister served dinner and said, "You should think about going back." I looked at the food. It tasted like defeat. "I can't," I said softly. She sighed. "I can't support you forever." I nodded. I already knew. That night, I sat alone on the balcony. The city lights blinked without care. I realized something painful. I wasn't just divorced. I was untethered. No safety, no backup, just me. And yet, under all that fear, something small stayed alive. A thought I didn't speak aloud. If I survived this, I would never beg for belonging again. On the fifth morning, I took a job I never imagined I would accept. Cleaning work, not because I looked down on it, but because once I had managed a household, accounts, decisions. Now I was being measured by how invisible I could be. Still, hunger is louder than pride. So I said yes. They handed me a plain uniform, loose, faded, already worn by someone else before me. When I put it on, something strange happened. People stopped seeing me. No one asked my name. No one made eye contact. I learned how quickly respect can disappear. The supervisor spoke loudly, even when standing close. "Finish fast, don't miss corners." I nodded. I didn't argue. There are moments when silence is not weakness, it's strategy. As I cleaned, my hands moved with quiet memory. Years of managing a home had taught me efficiency. I didn't rush. I didn't complain. By afternoon, my section was done. Properly. The supervisor looked surprised, not impressed, just surprised. At payment time, she counted the money slowly, then paused. "You're lucky we hired you," she said. Lucky. The words stayed with me. I smiled politely and took the cash. I needed it too much to respond. That night, my back ached in places I didn't know could ache. I lay on the floor again. Pain pulsed gently, like a reminder. This was the cost of survival. But pain also kept me grounded. It reminded me I was still moving. As I stared at the ceiling, another thought surfaced. My husband had always said I was useless without him, that I didn't earn, that I didn't contribute, and yet here I was, earning, surviving. Poor, yes. Broken? No. The next day, an older woman at work noticed me rubbing my wrist. She handed me a cloth soaked in warm water. "First week is always hardest," she whispered. I nodded, suddenly emotional. Sometimes kindness from strangers heals more than apologies from family. During lunch, the others talked about their lives. I listened. No one asked about mine. They assumed they already knew it. Divorced, broke, finished. People love simple stories. That evening, as I counted my small earnings, something shifted inside me. I wasn't ashamed of this money. It was clean, earned. My husband had money, but he didn't have this proof. I made a decision that night. I didn't announce it. I didn't pray loudly. I just decided. I would never return to someone who valued me only by what I owned. Life was pressing in from all sides, but instead of crushing me, it was shaping me. And somewhere inside that tired body, a steadier woman was forming. The truth did not arrive loudly. It came quietly, like dust settling after a storm, when you finally see what was always there. One afternoon, while sorting through an old suitcase I had brought from my mother's house, I found a brown envelope. It was thin, slightly torn at the edge, and smelled faintly of old paper and camphor. I almost ignored it, thinking it was another electricity bill or some expired document that no longer mattered. But something in my hands paused. Inside were copies of papers I had completely forgotten about. Land documents, savings certificates, and a handwritten note in my father's careful, slanted writing. "Ye tumhara hak hai, kisi ko batana zaruri nahi." I sat on the floor, my back against the bed, holding those papers like they were fragile glass. My heart did not race. It felt heavy, like it had been waiting years to feel this weight. I was not broke. I had never been. The money was not huge in a dramatic sense, no luxury cars, no grand houses in foreign cities, but it was stable, secure, enough to stand on my own feet without asking anyone for help. What hurt was not the discovery. What hurt was the memory of how confidently my husband had said, "You have nothing." That evening, I called my uncle, the only person my father had trusted with details. His voice was slow, tired, but kind. "We were waiting," he said softly. "Tum khud samajh jao, isliye chup rahe." I understood then. This was not a secret meant to save me. It was a test meant to reveal others. In the days that followed, small pieces of truth kept surfacing. A neighbor from my old street met me at the market. She hesitated, then said, "तुम्हें पता है, तुम्हारे जाने के बाद वो लोग क्या कह रहे थे?" I shook my head. She sighed. "He told everyone you were a burden, that you brought nothing into the marriage." I smiled politely and changed the topic, but inside something shifted. Then came the call from a mutual friend. Casual voice, careless honesty. "He's planning to remarry," she said. "Found someone whose family has strong finances." I thanked her and ended the call. My hands did not shake. My chest did not tighten. Instead, there was a strange calm. The picture was complete now. He did not leave me because I was broke. He left me because he thought I was. That difference mattered more than he would ever understand. One night, while washing dishes at my mother's sink, I looked at my reflection in the steel plate. The woman staring back looked older, but also clearer. I whispered to myself, "Tumhari कीमत कभी पैसे से नहीं थी." The truth didn't make me angry. It made me quiet. And in that quiet, a decision began to form. Not revenge, not confrontation, just dignity. Because sometimes the real power does not come from proving others wrong. It comes from knowing exactly who they are and choosing how much access they deserve to your life. That night, I folded the papers carefully and placed them back in the envelope, not as a weapon, but as a reminder. The truth had come, and with it, my balance returned. I did not rush into action after learning the truth. I let it sit with me for a while, like warm tea cooling on a table. Some decisions need silence before they are made. For the first time in months, I slept without replaying old arguments in my head. The questions stopped hurting. I already had the answers. The next morning, I woke up early and made a list. Not an emotional list, a practical one. What I had, what I needed, what I would no longer tolerate. I visited a small office recommended by my uncle. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place with wooden chairs and a ticking wall clock. The man across the desk spoke slowly, explaining things in simple words. "These documents are solid," he said. "You were never dependent. You just didn't know." I nodded. There was no pride in my chest, only relief. I opened a separate bank account in my own name. Signing those papers felt strange, like learning to write again after years. My hand hesitated at first, then steadied. This account was not about wealth. It was about control. Back at my mother's house, I made small changes. I reorganized the cupboard. I cleaned out old clothes that still smelled like my past life. I cooked meals that I liked, not ones meant to impress anyone. At night, I began keeping a notebook, not to write complaints, but to write boundaries. What I would say if he ever contacted me, what I would not explain anymore, what questions I would no longer answer. One afternoon, his sister called. Her voice was sweet, almost rehearsed. "We were worried about you," she said. "You should come and talk. Things can still be managed." I listened quietly. "Thank you," I replied calmly, "but some things don't need managing. They need accepting." There was a pause on the other end, then silence. I did not block numbers. I did not announce my strength to the world. I simply stopped shrinking. A week later, I heard through someone else that he was struggling. Legal matters, expenses, pressure from people who once praised him. The news did not make me smile. It also didn't make me sad. It felt distant, like hearing about a storm in a city you no longer live in. I prepared myself, not for revenge, but for possibility, because I knew one thing clearly now. People who leave you when they think you have nothing often return when they realize you had more than they imagined. And if that day came, I wanted to meet it standing straight, not with anger, but with clarity. That evening, I folded my notebook and placed it beside my bed. Outside, the call to prayer echoed softly through the air. I closed my eyes and whispered a quiet promise to myself. No more explaining my worth. This was not the end of the story. It was the pause before something returned. Something I never expected to face with such calm. Not late at night, not dramatically, just as the sky was turning gray, the kind of time when the day quietly gives up. I was sitting near the window, folding clothes, when my mother said softly, "Wo bahad karahe." My hands paused. I felt my breath slow down instead of tighten. I did not rush. I did not ask questions. I walked to the door at my own pace. He stood there, looking smaller than I remembered. Not weaker, just unsure. He did not meet my eyes at first. Then he cleared his throat. "Can we talk?" he asked. I nodded once and stepped aside. We sat in the living room, a small distance between us. The ceiling fan hummed quietly above. No witnesses, no audience. He spoke first. "I didn't know," he said, "about the papers, about the savings, about the truth." I listened, not because I needed answers, but because I wanted to see if he understood. "I thought you had nothing," he continued, voice low. "I thought I was carrying everything." I looked at him calmly and replied, "You thought wrong." The words were simple, but they landed heavily. He looked up then, surprised by my tone. There was no bitterness in it, only fact. "I made decisions based on that," he said, almost pleading. "I didn't mean to hurt you." I took a slow breath. "Hurt came from how easily you believed I was replaceable," I said softly, "not from the divorce papers." Silence filled the room. He shifted in his seat. "I'm in trouble now," he admitted. "Things aren't working out. I thought maybe we could reconsider." There it was. Not love, not regret, calculation. I felt no anger rise, only clarity. "I am not here to fix consequences I didn't create," I said gently, "and I am not angry." That seemed to confuse him more than rage ever could. I stood up and walked to the cupboard. I took out the brown envelope and placed it on the table between us. "These were always there. You just never thought I could have them." He stared at the envelope like it could speak. "I didn't show you these because I didn't need to, but now you know." He swallowed. "What do you want then?" he asked. I met his eyes. "I want peace," I said, "and I already have it." For a moment, he looked like he might say something else, apologize, argue, but he didn't. He stood up slowly. "I see," he said, though I wasn't sure he truly did. When he reached the door, he paused. "Take care," he said. I nodded. When the door closed behind him, the house felt lighter. Not victorious, just honest. I sat back down, feeling something settle inside me. The truth had not shouted. It had simply stood its ground. And so had I. The house was quiet again. Not empty, but peaceful. I folded the last of the clothes and placed them neatly in the cupboard. Everything had a place now, even my thoughts. I reflected on the months that had passed, the nights on the floor, the small humiliations, the quiet victories, the discovery of the envelope, and the clarity that followed. Life had a way of testing you when you least expected it, not for punishment, not always for lesson, but to show you what you were capable of. I realized that my worth was never tied to money or approval. It was tied to how calmly I could stand when everything else fell away. I started taking small walks again, through the streets I had once avoided, through markets, past familiar shops. People looked at me differently now, not because I was rich, not because I had power, but because my posture had changed. My eyes carried quiet strength. My hands held dignity. One afternoon, I made tea for my mother and myself, and we sat near the window, watching the sun stretch its warm fingers across the balcony. I smiled softly. "I am okay," I whispered. Not to her, not to anyone, to myself. I learned that forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean welcoming someone back who left when they thought you were weak. Forgiveness is the calm in your own heart. It is the decision to stop carrying anger as a burden. It is the understanding that your life is yours to protect, grow, and honor. And in that quiet acceptance, I found more peace than I had in years. Life may sometimes take away what seems essential, but the truth and your dignity can never be stolen. Sometimes the most powerful victories are not loud. They are silent. They are lived. I took one last look around the room, closed the curtains gently, and let the day settle. I had lost nothing that truly mattered. If this story touched your heart, like, comment, and subscribe for more calm, real-life emotional stories. Have you ever faced a moment that tested your true worth?